Welcome to Africa Speaks. I'm Pamela Anchang. I would like to welcome to Africa Speaks a remarkable human rights advocate and a woman of faith and justice. Athia Carrim is the Interfaith and Education Director at the International Institute of Tolerance in California. She currently represents the Institute on the board of the Los Angeles Faith-Based Family Services and the Department of Homeland Security DHS Community Engagement Roundtable. Following the tragic 9/11 attacks, Athia has served on a number of forums promoting justice and human rights. Athia was awarded Ambassador of Peace by the Interreligious and International Federation for World Peace in 2004. Thank you so much for joining us today on Africa Speaks, Miss Athia.
Thank you, Pamela, for having me. I'm so honored.
This is such, it's been a long time coming that we have this. Today is a conversation about leadership, faith, everything that the world needs, and you are just a beacon of tolerance. So first things first, always want to know, tell us a little bit about your origins and how you found yourself in this United States of America.
Okay. I'm born and raised in South Africa. We are about the 6th generation, so for us we are South Africans. We couldn't be anything else. And we left and we went to Australia. And while we were there, we had an invitation for my husband to come and perform the prayer in the month of Ramadan, the Tarawih prayer. And when he came, they were so pleased with him, and they offered him a position, and we found ourselves over here.
The rest is history. So where did your family come from, the 6 generations to settle in South Africa?
Yes. Multiple places, multiple intermarriages. And so we all understand that we don't have a particular place to go back to or a particular culture to go to. What binds us in South Africa was just the religion. That was important. And, under the apartheid regime, that's the only way to keep everyone in control was to give them no political privilege or benefits, but just to give them their religion and let them grow in their own little pockets. That's what apartheid was all about.
That's awesome. So how do you describe your heritage in the scheme of pan-Africanism?
Pan-Africanism has reinvented itself, as it has to do with the changing times. It originally began with the idea of independence, and the tragedy was so much of Pan-Africanism, all its major conferences were held outside Africa. And Pan-Africanism has its roots in Africa, by the African people, with African ideals. But because of the situation and colonialism, they had to go out. Now, the younger generation in Africa are seeing Africa in a different light. They are no more under colonialism. The concept of slavery and growing out of that identity has gone from them. They have an identity of their own. They have shaped it today. With globalization, with the social media platforms, with the fashion, with music, with the dance, they have a different outlook completely. So if we look back, we must learn to look back and take the best that we can, but now we have to grow for the future. And Africa is not for Africans. I can tell you there are so many people that have settled in Africa. For example, even the whites that have come into South Africa. There's no way home. They're never going back to England. They are never going back to the Netherlands. They are never going back to Germany. Africa is home. And so we come from that generation where Africa is home. It cannot be anything else. Because where must we go? Where must we go? Where are we going to go? We cannot relate to anything because we were born there. We were brought up there. We may have had cultural differences, language differences. And for me, wearing this outfit today is very important symbol for my upbringing in South Africa, because we were never allowed to mix. We were never allowed to be with different races and different people, because the concept of apartheid was we must develop on parallel lines, never to meet.
I knew you gave me the right answers to that question, because when you think about the identity of the African, we have to get to a place where we go beyond race. Yes. And so when someone, I remember the first time I met you and you told me it was at a South African event.
Yes.
At the Consul General's house, and you said you were from South Africa. And most people tend to forget that South Africa is much like the United States. And not just South Africa, but the continent of Africa is so racially diverse that when I ask the question about pan-Africanism, it's because some people, depending on who you speak to, has a definition of who the African is. And you're just saying that we need to go beyond race, I guess.
Africa has always been the hot pot for everything. And today it's the hot pot for new innovations. I just learned this morning in the news that in Nigeria or Kenya, I must not mess it up, they've just decided to create their own shoes. And they are using natural, local elements that they can find. And it's going into every local supermarket, and people are wearing it. So it's not endorsed from the West, it's not endorsed internationally, but it's giving them, it's handmade. They have no factories, they have no machinery. They're doing it with their hands, a labor of love. And it is going, and they can only make that much. And that's it, it's done.
That's awesome, because I wouldn't be surprised if it's Nigeria, because I hear in Nigeria, all you have to do is walk past, and someone's going to create your shoes.
Someone's going to do something for you.
That's so creative and innovative.
Creativity,
yes, and maybe Kenya too.
And it's that energy.
Yeah.
It's energy. Like, this morning a group said, Egypt has a problem with trash. They decided we're going to do something about it. So they invented something to turn that trash into consumerism.
That's awesome. You know what's funny? We're sitting here at the Institute of Tolerance in Carson, California, and you're the executive director of this institute.
My husband is.
Your husband
I'm one
is.
of the directors.
But you're one of the directors. I mean, you're big, and you're a Muslim woman, and we know that women of African descent, we have such challenges. I wanted to talk about the tolerance issues that women in general, even in the United States, they face a lot of backlash, even trying to advance. We had a hard time electing the first female president, and people can debate it however they want, but we didn't get a chance. United States did not get a chance. Where do you see the place of the African woman in today's society in the scope of things?
I think, and like you, there are powerful African women right here in the United States that are doing wonderful things. Back home, the mentality has changed. Look, let's go back to history. Africans had matriarchal societies. Women ran things until Christianity and colonialism entered. So they put them 10 steps behind, and a new ideology was put in. Now they are refinding themselves, they are redefining who they are. And they're not doing it in big time. I mean, look, we don't have all the resources that we have here in the West. Okay? If you are in a remote village, okay? Look, take the example of Sister Fa, for example. She left, she went to Germany, she got whatever resources she could. She went to the remote villages. She sat at the feet of the matriarchs, and she sang her song, and she changed the community. They have this in them. Now they are taking the opportunity, because opportunity was denied to them for whatever reasons. And they are emerging, even after the neo-colonialism, when we had a whole lot of authoritarian rulers, and we still have some of them that have come up and have maintained the status quo. It's a terrible thing to say coming from Africa, but it's a fact. But today we have them in their homes, in the very remotest areas that we cannot understand. They can come up and do something.
It's true that women have always been at the forefront of growth, in Africa especially. And you're right, it looks like Christianity and colonialism set us back. Isn't that ironic, though?
I think when anyone comes to occupy, it is oppression. It is to undo what is there, to phase out what is there, because you have to implement a system that will ensure your success, not to sustain what was already there. And let me give you an example of things that tells us, makes us think for a moment. We are living here in Los Angeles, you and I, and you know Hollywood is big here. And if anyone has gone to see the movie 300, okay, it is the movie, all right? It is a concept of 300 men who stood at this pass and who defended the Greek Empire against the Persian invasion. But when we sensationalize the masculine form, when we sensationalize all this wonderful thing and this testosterone and everybody says, oh my God, look at them, we forget the essence of how this began. And the movie begins with three important things that find its root in Africa. One, oracular worship. So the priestess is in the oracle. They come to her. She gets possessed by the god, his spirit. And then he explains to her what he tells them through her what is to be done. And the important thing is, before it has to be done, there's got to be a human sacrifice. So now those are not barbaric, savage things coming from the Greek Empire. But had it been Africa, now that
would be savage.
That would be savage, uncivilized, uneducated. We got to go in there and save those people and give them our philosophy and our religion and our thought structure to remove them from this. But they survived. They survived for millions of years, preserving a continent that is so full of natural resources. And it was only less than 80 to 100 years of colonialism that depleted so much in Africa. Today we can't even find fresh water.
Isn't that just compelling? That is so compelling. So tell me though, women in the diaspora, and the reason I'm talking so much about women's issues because you are such a leader and you're a force to reckon with. Women in the diaspora, a lot of the time, sometimes when we try to initiate things, we feel put down. You're becoming too westernized. Have you heard that?
Oh, too much.
We're becoming too westernized. When contrary to that, we came from an empowered culture and civilization. So the tides seem to have turned. So how do we assert ourselves and embrace that strength in ourselves?
I think we have a natural capacity to do that. And I'm sorry to say, I'm just so sorry to say, it has always been the dominance of the male to be comfortable and to keep the female in a particular place. Now, if we come to the West, like you as well as me, oh, she's gone to the West and look at her. She's forgotten her ideals. She's forgotten the traditions that she's come from. No, you become more emboldened. And you take the strength back because we are not living in an environment that is totally taken over by the practices and cultures of our people. We have come out of it. And we have learned to disperse ideas and disperse values as we meet different people. But when we go back home, we have our massive little communities still there and still interacting. And then you come in as an outsider. You're still them, but you're an outsider. Your outsiderness comes from the fact that you are saying things that, oh my God, you shouldn't have said it. But you are saying things that were said before. But it was hidden and forgotten and buried under a whole lot of trauma. Look, we have had trauma like you have no idea. Look at our continent. The trauma has just been amazing. We've had droughts, which we have really dealt with well before. Intertribal fighting, which we have dealt well with before. And then when we had structures that were coming in, it was the first slot was Islam before Christianity. Then Christianity came. Then Islam came again. Before that, we had the Vikings. Before that, we had the ancient Greeks, and we had the Romans coming and invading. So Africa has always been the center of the world where you had to pass, and you had to decide how you're going to pass this place. Am I going to invade it? Am I going to tolerate it? Am I going to lynch it? How am I going to do it? Or am I going to stay there and grow some roses and then move on? Some of them did. The products are there. I'm a product of that. But it has gone through so much of turmoil. Today, it is going through so much of turmoil. But Africa has hope because the people have hope.
You know what? I am not going to contest that because you said it all. How do we then raise our daughters in this society, trying to match our traditional values with the Western values? How do you juggle that?
I think the most important foundation is values are common human values all around the world. So it's not that I have a value from Africa and you have a value from the West and we are different. No, the values are based on justice, compassion, love, coming together, family. Family is very important to us. Food is very important. I don't care what anybody says. We have the best of times on food. So these are the common core values that runs through humanity. So there should be no idea of conflict. It is the way we express it. It is the practices we apply to it that makes it different. All of us want to get married. Hello. From the time you're a young girl, that's what mom says. The whole family is watching you. The uncle say, there's too much reading there, you got to get married. I learned the same thing when I went to Australia. I learned the same thing when I went to Europe. I learned the same thing when I came to the United States. So it doesn't matter, the core values are there. Marriage, religion, family, food, babies, all the stuff that we have to do, we are doing it. But we are doing it differently. Let's understand it like this. God created the entire ocean that surrounds the earth. We call it the ocean. That's what God called it. In every scripture, it's the water that surrounds the land. But we know that each particular ocean has a particular function, has particular characteristics that are different. Okay? Now, a sage has once said, an Eastern sage has said, that there is one water that surrounds the earth. It is man that has made it, the Atlantic, the Indian. That division has not come from God, it has come from man.
So water is water, no matter where it is.
No matter where it is, whether it is salty or sweet, it's water.
Water knows water. And to that point, so when it looks like when the values are from Africa, they're perceived as savage and uncivilized and primitive. But the same values, I want to get married, I want to have babies, and the requirements of society are pretty much the same.
The same. How you deal with your husband, how you deal with your in-laws, it's the same.
Let's talk about something else. We always think of the Muslim woman as quiet. So I'm wondering, are you just defiant?
I didn't know what.
Or is it a misnomer? I want to clear this
thing. I was born with.
Are you one of those that said, no way? Because you know the Catholic faith, most Christian faiths, the different religions of Christianity, and some people think Catholicism is different from Christianity and there's all this nonsense. But most of the Catholic faith, for example, is been perceived as chauvinistic because they will not let women become priests in certain rules and stuff. How do you distinguish the rules of an entity, an institution, like the Christian institution and Catholicism in particular, and your faith as a Muslim woman who is so forthright?
I think I come out of the mold. There's a different mold over here. But I know among Muslim women that there are those women that are also very forthright and very bold and would want to say things. We are also the creatures of the moment. Let's remember that we always are creatures of the moment. And we come from a history of all the revealed religions, and people might not like what I'm going to say. All the revealed religions and all the such known practiced religions before scriptural religion. We're talking about Taoism, I'm talking about Confucianism, I'm talking about Hinduism, I'm talking about Buddhism, I'm talking of all these animism that existed much earlier than the scriptural religions. There was a so-called idea of the way society functioned. And in that function, it was the man who was on the top. The hierarchical structure remained the same. And then women had subordinate positions, whether we like it or not. I was shocked when I came to the United States and I heard women 20 years ago tell me that when they went to the church, they were actually entered from the back door. And they always stood at the back while men took the front seat. I mean, you know, this was a charge against Muslims because men pray in the front and women pray at the back. And for me to come from that tradition to learn that such a thing has actually happened, it just shocked me. I had no idea. I had no idea that, you know, you should speak, you are the gentle being, you must be quiet and you must be gentle in the way you speak, and you must be the one to exercise patience no matter what happens. This has been a trend over the centuries. So if any woman wants to stand up and talk out or raise her voice, she is not of the norm. She's the one you've got to be very careful of. You know, you've got to be very careful of her. But I think there are more and more women that are coming up. As for me, I'm most fortunate in the fact that I am married to an imam, I'm married to a leader who has a different approach to women. And he has this concept, and he pushes me every time, and he says, Athia, you must realize that you are an example for the women at the center. You are their strength. So when you go up there, they are embracing themselves up there. And this is so important because it's not the idea of my going up as a woman and standing up for myself. It's my going up for a woman and standing up for my kind. That makes a very big difference. So it's always, if anything happens, I say, my ladies who did this, or we who did this. And the way we use our pronouns are very important because it says something about who we are instead of who we are being molded to be. And there's so much women can and are doing today. For example, your platform. Okay, it's a different platform. But it's a platform that if we didn't have all this this technology, our foremothers may have done it. It may have been under a tree. It may have been with the whole tribe or the community sitting on the floor with the cola beans or whatever is there, the yams. But they may have sat there with their legs out in front and they were giving the message.
Africa is really speaking. So, do we women challenge this or do we support each other? Because sometimes, have you found out that maybe your greatest adversaries or challengers will be your womankind?
Yes.
So we try to challenge the status quo. And some men embrace us like your husband. And sometimes our own women hold us back.
Yes.
What do we have to say to that?
Women hold us back because there's a fear. But we, like you said, we need to band together. And remember, sometimes there's a mindset we are working against. So we got to say, like we say in our culture in Islam, we say, work with hikmah, work with wisdom. If you need to go to a community, go to them on their terms. Respect who they are, embrace who they are. Then you want to say something, say it. And there are some communities I go to, I mean, it's unbelievable that you feel totally blocked out. You feel totally blocked out. And then there's always this thing, watch her, don't talk to her, be careful of her. Be careful, don't get too close to her. You know, it might just create a problem. And I think you may also have encountered this. But I think the most important thing is for us women to recognize and embrace each other. Because in this unity is strength, and in it we can create a foundation so our daughters can draw on it. And our daughters can stand up on that foundation. That's the important.
So how do we women in the diaspora out in the United States and other countries, how do we then empower the women back home who want to have a voice?
I know that is, it's not difficult, it's very possible. It's not difficult, it's very possible. There is a lot of red tape involved in this. And unfortunately, we have to go through certain avenues and channels to get what we want. But I don't think if we make a connection, because I always believe in the sisterhood. If we make a connection, let me give you an example. There was a fire in Senegal, outside Dakar. And apparently, I think 50 men died. 50 men were killed in that fire. It was a retreat and they were killed. So when us women got together, we thought, okay, there are 50 widows with families. We don't know if they can take care of themselves straight away, whether they are armed with what we have, with skills or knowledge or a career or whatever. So we got together and we said, okay, let's try and help them. And the best way we can help them would be to help them with money, because that's what they need straight away. They may have something to pay, they may have to feed the kids, whatever it is. But the problem was we could not get to them. So we decided, okay, let's Skype. But they were so remote, they were scared to look into the TV screen. So what we did was we had to speak to the local imam. Okay, we had to get somebody here. Mom was the one who played it with us. So she came and she spoke to him in French. I spoke to Mom in English. Mom spoke to the imam in French. The imam spoke to the people in Wolof to get the message through. And we were given that relayed to us in 4 different languages to say thank you to us. So you see, it's not that it's impossible. But if we can cross all the bridges, we can do it. It's not an overnight thing either. But if we have the right players, we can do it quickly.
And maybe better still, we start raising kids to feel that way, to raise secure boys.
Yes.
Who will become future husbands and more inclusive of the role that a woman has to play. Because if you're not there tomorrow, who's going to pick up the mantle?
And I think raising your kids is so important, because I raised both my children outside South Africa. They don't know the South African situation. They don't know the culture as I knew it and I grew up in it. So for them, South Africa is an outside thing. It's mom and dad's home. They would never tell me I'm a South African. They tell me I'm an Australian. That's it, I'm an Aussie. That's all I know. That's where I grew up. But like you said, it didn't matter where I grew them up. The values mattered. That they must stand up for themselves. That we always have the concept that when you marry, and it goes right across, that the man will take care of yourself and look for a good match, and make sure, and we still got this thing, make sure that they are educated, either an engineer,
good providers,
doctor, and good providers, and come from a great family and whatever. And I taught my girls, we are doing the sacrifice to educate you. You must be able to give yourself everything. If a man comes to you and says, I can give you a Mercedes, and I can give you a mansion, and I can give you this, and I can give you that, turn around and say, I can give myself all these, what else can you offer me? That's it.
You know what, on that note, we're done with women's issues. Let's continue on tolerance.
Okay, let's go. That's a big one.
That's a message that every young girl needs to hear, be able to take care of it. My mom used to say, your first husband is your education and your ability to take care of yourself. A man is secondary, it's just second husband, whatever position we want to give them. So let's talk about tolerance and what's going on in your country, South Africa. The recent spate of xenophobic violence. I don't know if we call it xenophobia, because it's like Africans and Africans. I don't know. What is it?
I was home last year, and I had spoken to the housekeeper of my mother-in-law. She was quite ill. And she is born and bred in the Gauteng province in Pretoria. And I spoke to her and I told her what is going on, and she was very angry. She was going to the graduation of her daughter, and she says to me, I am sick and tired of these people coming from different places of Africa and taking our jobs and doing the things. Now, remember, when we galvanized behind the concept of the Free Mandela campaign, and we wanted what we consider our democracy in South Africa, the whole movement was very unionized. We wanted for the first time to be unionized because we didn't want to be taken advantage of like we were under the apartheid era. So we wanted to define work ethos, work practices that gave us time, that gave us specific benefits, that we had a salary that we could take. We had days off. Remember, everyone lived in maids, lived in gardeners who worked 24 hours, 7 days a week. So the unionization was a very powerful force that drove the democratic ideal in South Africa. Now, that very concept is being threatened. And this is what common South Africans look at. And it's not only people from other places of Africa coming. We have the problem with the Pakistanis. We have the problem with the people from Bangladesh. We have the problems with people from China, some Chinese. There's some people that come from Malaysia, but I mean the bigger crowds are these people that come in. Okay, they come, they begin to open a store. They open a store on the street. They open a store in the back of their homes. So what we're looking at no rent being paid, we no licensing. This can lead to so much of disparity. Because a South African that wants to open up a business has to have a license. He has to have a premises. He has to pay rent. He has to have an inventory. Now, these ones who are opening everywhere, I mean, every corner you look, somebody's opening something.
So then why not attack the system? Why attack the migrants?
They have been talking. They have been talking. They have been negotiating with the government, with the agencies. And I don't know how bad it is, but what had happened was terrible. And the tragedy is that there are some, like the taxi organizations and that are a law unto themselves. It's frightening if you go there. And the first xenophobic attacks actually took place with taxi drivers. Whether it was a space that they wanted, whether it was a location, territorial, but it started like that with the Nigerians and with the South Africans, and it just exploded into everything else. And the tragedy is South Africans have suffered so long, 300 to 400 years, and they have sacrificed so much for the freedom. And they, we gave everything to Mandela's message. When we say he's Madiba, he's the father of the nation, he was the father of the nation for every race, whether you were white, whether you were colored, whether you were Indian or Asian, or whether you were black. He was not the Madiba for the black people of South Africa. He was the Madiba for every race. Everyone loved what he said because it resonated so much to what our dream was, what we wanted for ourselves, for the nation, and for the country. And suddenly, that has dispersed. And when South Africa opened its borders to everyone with this welcoming message of coming and making a home and making a life, it did not mean depriving the very ones who invited you from that possibility. And I think the underlying anger is that we have territories, certain places that you as a South African cannot go because of the fear that is either taken over by the Nigerians or taken over by the Libyans or taken over by somebody else. So you can't go in there, you can't do this type of thing. And I think they are getting frustrated.
So how do they resolve this?
It will be taking a lot of talking, a lot of interacting with those groups, a lot of making them understand the sense of what is needed right now. That is important because we have come out of apartheid without a civil war, without a revolution. I think we were an example to the world how a reconciliation can make things work. So we reconciled because we had a common base upon which we were deprived, we were oppressed, we were taken, a lot of things were taken away from us. Now when we had the opportunity to get those things, then we have a wave of people coming from different parts of the world that were taking it away. So the healing process opened up another wound. And I don't know if South Africans right now at home understand. For them it's the fear of what is going to happen and the fear of the danger. I mean, I was born and brought up in South Africa for the first 24 years of my life. That is where I lived. We were never afraid to walk on the road, whether it was at night or during the day. We walked to school. We walked to Islamic school. We walked to a soccer match. That's what we did. We walked. Today, you can't let your child walk. Your child can be kidnapped. Your child can be taken away. Your child can be sold into slavery. We never grew up like that. We never grew up that you just walk and you have a drive-by shooting and somebody kills you. So think about the way we lived and think about the way we are living now. And I think there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of redefining who we are in the new South Africa. We were the rainbow nation. We embraced it. We went forth. Everyone threw themselves into becoming what we wanted to become. And suddenly, all that has fallen apart. And if you really look at it, children growing up now into South Africa and you ask them about the apartheid, it's a distant thing, it's a dinosaur to them. Because they didn't struggle like we struggle. They don't have those ideas and those aims and goals that we had. Theirs is different. They're living in a completely different world from us.
Well, we pray for reconciliation and we pray for healing.
We have always said that South Africa was a blessed land.
It is.
It is surrounded by water. It has amazing infrastructure. It has amazing resources. And it has amazing people. And my appeal will be here for them to come together. But the problem of Africa is a problem of governance and it's a problem of corruption.
There you go.
Whether we like it or not. It's not only in South Africa, it is everywhere.
It's all across the board.
And okay, we know we have it all over the world. I mean, don't think there's any country that does not have these things. But it is more highlighted in Africa. It is more brought forth to the media because it's Africa. And we have always been stigmatized as the underdeveloped nation or the underdeveloped continent. Yet, Africa has so much that it's doing amongst itself that we don't have a platform to talk about it. Imagine growing 1 million trees. You show me a single nation today that has done that. That people have gone in such outward areas that they had to walk, that they had to take bicycles because they couldn't drive there, but they went old and young to bury or to grow a tree so the next generation can survive. Yet we think of Africa as famine, drought, civil war, sex trafficking. We think of Africa as a place where people have no respect for human dignity, no respect for life as it is. But look at the bigger picture. Look at what they are doing. Look at how well they are doing it with the little that they have. The potential is there. They are ready to take the potential. We need a mindset, and we need to change the mindset. Africa does not need anyone from anywhere in the world to go there and to teach them. They have their core set of knowledge. They have their core set of resources. They do not need to be developed. They need to be given an avenue and an opportunity to develop themselves.
And you're very right. Media plays a big role because who tells your story shapes the story
Yes.
the way they want. Because all these things we're talking about happen here in California, happen here in the United States. The drive-bys, the racism, everything happens here. The raping and everything, and the kidnappings happen here. But when it's one little spit of something in Africa, it's highlighted and it's all the rave. So we're here at the Institute of Tolerance, and we're going to deal with everything that has to do with tolerance. So let's bring this home. What is the Institute of Tolerance about? What do you do?
Okay. When we decided on opening up something about 10, 11 years ago, we looked at what was happening in Southern California. Southern California had over 96 registered mosques. We didn't want to add a mosque. We wanted to have a community center and an interfaith center where we could have forums of discussion. We could build bridges of understanding and trust. We believed that we needed this so much because remember, everyone here had their chance of being the black sheep. And after 9/11, we Muslims were, whether we like it or not. Every single thing that went wrong, there was a scapegoat, and Islam became the scapegoat. And Muslims who lived in this country for over 100 years, who were law-abiding citizens, who were contributors. And you know, when we look at our communities, we have a very affluent community here in the United States. Muslims who work in NASA, they are in Washington, D.C., they are in New York, they worked in the World Trade Center, they are policymakers, architects. I mean, they are in every walk of life, and suddenly there was this blanket thrown. They painted everyone with the same brush. So whoever you are, what you contributed to society here was all lost. And terror became the name of the game.
Yeah.
And it was devastating for so many communities. And we believed that this was our time to come out there and to say, this is not who we are. And then we said, come to us. Come to our communities. Come break bread with us and come understand who we are before you want to understand what is being told about us. And tolerance is not something that you know, when you look at the definition of tolerance, it always says, you know, you just put up with something. No, our tolerance is not putting up with something. Our tolerance is what the Prophet said, we have to redefine ourselves in our spirituality. And the most important thing is, before you are anything, you're a human being. That's the hardest road in tolerance to ever travel. Now, we come from a Sufi tradition, and that's what Sufism teaches us. Before you are anything, you are a human being.
Oh, the first thing.
First thing. And God is the embodiment of love. If you can see him any other way, he ceases to exist in you. So we look at it in this way, that he created everyone, whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Jew, whether you're a communist, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Muslim. God created you.
You're a human being first.
And without discrimination, he provides for you.
Absolutely.
So there is not an atheist that goes to bed hungry. There is not a Muslim that can say he goes to bed hungry. There is not a Jew that can say he goes to bed hungry, because God provides for all. We say he is Ghafurur Rahim. He is the most kind, the most generous, the most compassionate amongst us. And therefore we hold on those things. But to be generous and to be compassionate within you is a very difficult thing. And I learned it over here. I learned it when people came. And we have communities that have left us because they didn't like the setup here. They didn't like the idea that women were at the forefront, that women were talking, that the imam would have a social center at the back where you sat as a family. Because this is a family center.
How do you tell children, Muslim children who go to school and get teased or set aside by their friends? You know, kids can be cruel.
Oh, yes.
How do you tell children, families that are raising Muslim kids, how to deal with this?
That's what we do most of the time over here when we have the kids and we talk. And any incident that comes up, we talk about it. And we tell the children that first and foremost, you must understand who you are. And if anybody asks you who you are, tell them who you are. I'm a Muslim. I'm an American. I was born here. I believe in God. I believe in being good. I believe in being kind and being polite. And I said to them, there are people who are going to be very mean to you and very bad to you. But let's see, what would you choose to be? You have a choice. You can choose to be good and kind and polite, or you can choose to become exactly what that person is. You can go on being mean, and this is where the bullying comes in a lot. I'm a commissioner for the anti-bullying prevention in the city of Carson. And as a teacher for 30 years, I mean, you know, we deal with these issues all the time. And the whole idea is to reconstruct the esteem of the child, the confidence that the child has in itself. And I notice how many adults don't have it. They don't have that, and they walk around and, you know, for a child to mend a broken fence is very easy because children are forthright and they are forgiving and they have a tendency to forget, and adults don't.
No, we don't.
So when we mend our bridges, we're still thinking of what happened. We say, we forgive you, hello, I forgive, but I do not forget.
I don't forget.
I will bring it up. But children are different. They
Yeah.
have a different personality, and they are the best to work with, and they hurt. And they say to me, why am I different? One little boy, he ran away from school, from middle school, and the parents called us and said, we can't find him, we don't know where he is. And then we said to the parent, okay, where is his usual places that he goes to? And they said, you know, he loves the park. And he was sitting under the slide, and I said to him, what's the matter? And he says, I'm tired of being called Osama.
Oh, no.
These were my friends. We went right through elementary school together, and now I'm in grade 6 and they call me Osama. And it was hurtful, and he had to remove himself, and for him he had to rethink. These were with me for the past 8 years. They were my friends, and suddenly I'm somebody else and something else. It was a very hurtful thing. And we had to coax him and get him out of that little hole and get him back. And I didn't take him home. I brought him to my house, sat with him, and I sat him down and I said, there is nothing wrong with you.
You know, that's a very good way of looking at it, because don't worry about the bully. Take care of yourself.
Yes.
Because the bully is never going to change. But you need to build yourself. And like you said, some adults don't even have that self-esteem you're talking
Yes.
about, and then let alone children. Oh my gosh. So tell us, you are the ambassador for peace in, was it 2004? When was that? You were awarded ambassador for peace.
No, I was awarded ambassador for peace. The first one was after 9/11.
Yeah, but then the
2001.
Interreligious.
Interreligious, yes.
Yes. That was 2004. I have your notes. I have the
my
411 on you, girl. Yes. Tell me about some of the things that you do as the ambassador for
a
peace.
lot.
Yes.
I did work a lot in the community. And what we did was, for the first time after 9/11, the youth were having a lot of problems. And we performed what was called Simunye. I took it from when President Mandela was inaugurated, and the call was, we are Simunye, one people, one nation in South Africa. And I took that concept, and I went out to the South Bay regions as an interfaith base, and I spoke to them, and I said, bring your youth together and let them express themselves as one nation and one people of the United States. Nothing was going to come and break us for who we were. And I tell you, it was amazing. I had about over 200 different youth groups that performed.
That is just
And
marvelous.
they all came together. So we had people who were doing the snake dance, we had people who were doing the ribbon dance, we had people who were doing bhangra, whatever, to express who they are and to celebrate who they are, but in their diversity. That's what makes the mosaic of any people, of the world itself. It's a global thing. So I did that, and I served on a lot of councils and by invitation, served on a lot of boards. And my idea was to get this message out because it has to be grassroots. We cannot allow a situation or an atmosphere that dictates not only terminology, but behavior and esteem and compassion to us. So I decided to go out, and it was difficult. It was difficult to go out because so many times they look at you. I did this experiment, and I want to talk to you about this. It was at a college, and I had, at this place, there were faculty there as well as lots of students. So I went up and I spoke to them, and I said what I had to say. At that time I had no hijab or anything. And they all just embraced me. They embraced the idea that I could come up and be funny and be knowledgeable and everything at the same time. So I said, I want to do an experiment with you. I said, all of you, close your eyes. And those who are standing, can you turn around? I took my black abaya, and I took my hijab, and I put it on. And I said, everyone can open their eyes now. I said, look at me. What do you see? And I said, be truthful to me. Who sees an oppressed woman? 90% of them put their hands up. Who sees an uneducated woman? All of them put up their hands. I wanted to demonstrate to them your stereotypes. Mm-hmm. 2 minutes ago, I was the thing, the modern woman who was out there with a vision, who had everything, sense of purpose, educated, had the language, had everything together. And in 2 minutes, I became a woman that was uneducated, uncivilized, unliberated. Oppressed. Everything I was controlled, I had no idea, and I was hidden behind a black form. And you see, this is the capacity of the human mind, that once you understand its power, you can understand of how you can dominate and manipulate it.
I'm glad you brought the topic of the hijab, because I would have been one of those who would have wondered. Knowing you though, of course, I know you're an empowered woman and all of that. However, if I'm being honest, I can't help but be truthful to say, every time I see the hijab, the burqa, the one that covers the full coverage. I always wonder, is she doing it because she wants to do it, likes to do it, or is it a conditioning? Is it a brainwashing? Because of course I don't understand the culture, because even as a Christian woman, there are so many things I question about my faith.
Of course. So
I think that it may be fair. It's not fair to stereotype, but I think we should ask before we judge.
Yes. And I personally, the law in Islam clearly states that your face must be shown. That's your identity.
It must be shown.
No law, there is no law that states your face must be covered. This is a very cultural practice. Okay, the covering of the face. And there are these, now it has been used as a political tool to keep the woman hidden. Okay, it's been used as a political tool in Afghanistan, where this wasn't there before. It's been used a lot as a boundary when it came to Iran. Yet the women of Iran, not all of them cover their faces. And Saudi Arabia now, it's such a cultural practice that they have to cover. And the youngest ones are actually covering their faces. Now in Rajasthan, there was a study done. And the concept was that the Mughal emperors that came from Persia were the ones that came out with the covering of the face. So there was a scholar who did a research, and he found out that the Rajas of this era were the ones that actually made sure that their women were covered. So if there's an invasion, the women are the first they can steal out. Mm-hmm. In medieval times, Europe did that. I have a picture, I wish I had my phone to show you. There was a parade in Venice in 1910 when the king came out with his wife, and she was completely wearing the burqa. Venetian.
I think most times people don't debate that women have been, conditioned in certain ways. But I think most of the argument is, if we know better, we should do better. And like you said, I think we mix up culture and religion. Because yes, I'm wondering, where's your burqa? That's why I asked you if you're the defiant one.
No,
Where's your
I
burqa?
have no requirement for it.
No, you don't.
have
So we
no-
mix up religion and culture.
And most of our communities do
Yes.
that. Most Muslim communities around the world, there's such a gray line between the culture and the religion. And what is not religion and is basic culture that predates Islam is what they apply and they take it. Look, wearing the black abaya, okay? If you go to Saudi Arabia, if you go to the Middle East, it is the best thing to wear in the desert. Do you know if you wear white, what happens to your clothes? It becomes so messed. And you have no way of knowing when a desert storm is going to come. You know, it is very frightening. I was caught up in one. And, you really feel like you're going to suffocate because these little particles of sand are just going everywhere. And sometimes the burqa is your best protection against suffocating. This was a geographical necessity for survival.
But now,
But it has been transformed into a religious practice.
and a political tool,
and a
like you said.
political tool. So this happens in so many places, in so many countries. Look, we as a race were used as a political tool in South Africa. Okay? There is racism everywhere in the world. Let me tell you that. But never has it been institutionalized and become part of the constitution of a nation like it did in South Africa. So there are many times that we use many things.
They start off for a good intent and then end up being weaponized.
I don't think apartheid was ever a good intent.
No,
at any
it
rate.
couldn't. No way.
That goes without saying.
I know.
Goes without saying.
No, that goes without saying. So, let's wrap this conversation up. I'm loving it. We're talking about everything tolerance. We're in the Institute of Tolerance. So this is my tolerance day.
And it's hard to be tolerant.
I
right?
know.
You get somebody that walks in your door and has a whole lot to say to you. Then you have somebody that comes in and messes the place.
But you know what? If I have you by my side, I'll exercise the patience. So you and a brave number of women recently launched a task force
Yes.
in the spirit of talking about tolerance and everything, and especially women's issues. I'd like to talk about women's issues with you because you're a woman, you're a leader, and sometimes it's hard to hear those voices that can really provide enlightenment. Tell us a little bit about the task force on the FGM, which I only learned about FGM, I must tell you, about 10 years ago. I did not know about it, even as an African child. I know about child marriage, but I didn't know about FGM until I came to the United States. You're part of that task force. I want you to shed some light and put the word about FGM and how dangerous it is.
The idea of the task force came when it has become criminalized in the United States. Now, if your child is born in the United States or your child is a U.S. citizen, any act, this is considered an act of violence against the child. The danger is you can have a sentence, a prison sentence. If you're caught in the airport, your citizenship can be stripped away from you. You can be deported, and your children will be put on a state case. Now, this is, for me, this was the most frightening thing for the communities that are practicing this. It's not a matter of accepting or condoning. Do they know the criminalization and the consequences for them? If you had come into this country for the past 20 and 30 years and you built a life and you are successful, but this is a practice that is part of your culture. And so you are either bound by it, the matriarchs are pushing it, or, for example, we know for a fact that in most of the cultures where this is being practiced, although the ideas and the beliefs are totally idiotic, unacceptable to us in today's days, but the underlying factor is if my daughter is not circumcised, or my child, goes men and women, but more so with the girls, if my child is not circumcised, she will never have acceptance in society. She will never marry. She will never be a contributing factor to her society. And therefore, she falls out as an outcast. She goes on the fringes of society. In certain cultures, as we've seen in Sister Fa's video on Monday, they're not even allowed to prepare food. That's the outcast, that's the shame. And no one wants their child to be shamed. No. And there's not a single parent who loves their child will say, I want to do this type of invasion or this type of trauma to my child without that core concept that I'm giving my child the best opportunity. But we know it's wrong. And we know the trauma and the pain is not just lived at that time. It's relived every time. When I talk to women who have undergone the practice, they tell me that, you know, I have born so many children, I don't feel anything. And that is the core of your sensuality that is taken away from you, an aspect that builds up who you are internally, your psychosocial, your emotional, your intellectual, your physical being is based on that. But it's a culture, and what angers me is whenever you want to research FGM or female circumcision, the whole continent of Africa just comes up. And yet it was practiced in all ancient cultures. It is practiced here in the United States right up to 1986. We're not talking of hundreds of years ago. It's widely practiced in Indonesia and in Malaysia. It has been first traced to Aboriginal practices in Australia. It has been done to the slaves in the ancient Grecian culture. If it was done to slave women, we have no reason to believe it was not done to other women.
You better believe it.
So think about a practice that has now become or culturally labeled and stigmatized for Africa, when history says otherwise. History proves otherwise. And this is what we need to do. And when the task force came together, we decided we are not interested in the persecution, we are interested in the prevention. We want to be those people that go into the communities, that come to know them, that build bridges of trust and bridges of understanding, and make them realize what they are doing. The mindset is wrong. The consequences for you in this country. We want to save you from that, but you need to save yourself first by becoming acknowledge of the fact that that's what you are doing is wrong. But it's very difficult. This is something that's been done for centuries. A stroke of a pen is not going to change it.
No, you've said it. Thank you so much. Last word would be, how do we as a human race stop defining ourselves as the race, religion, gender, nationality? How can we build a spirit of tolerance with each other?
I think the most important thing is to see each individual first as a human being. Not white, black, male, female, Jew, Christian, no. Look at them first as a human being. Let that be the basis upon which you endeavor to either communicate with them or interact with them as humans. I have gone into so many situations where I could see the discrimination, I could see the difference, I could see how I am being tested. Like a rabbi would come up to me and put up his hand. I'm a Muslim woman, am I going to give my hand? You see the test. Or they'll tell you, this meal, I remember my first time, they said, there's a roast chicken for you, and this meal came from the rabbi's house. That was the test. Am I going to reject it? Am I going to accept it? You understand, this is how you are always tested. And this is why sometimes we become despondent and we become upset. I know people I've been working with in the interfaith community for 10 years. At the bottom of their hearts, they still hate the Muslims. No matter how much we interacted with them, they never sought to think of us as a people that are like you. We love pizza, we love going to the movies, we like to have a party, we like to wear good clothes, we like to drive beautiful cars like you do, we like to have family gatherings, we like to do these things. What makes me so different from you? Because I'm a Muslim? Because you cannot change your mindset? Because you refuse to reinvent yourself to become a better human being? This is what we do. And the whole idea is to be human before you are anything. I bought a book for my grandchildren, Being Part of the Human Race. And when they learn to understand it, I will read it to them over and over again, because they are my caterpillars. They are in a cocoon now, and they must grow to be that beautiful butterfly.
Give me your hand, my sister.
We got to give back.
We got to give back. And you know what? You said it all. Water doesn't know ocean, river, blah, blah, blah. Water is water.
Water is water.
And so is the human being. Before being a race, a religion, a gender, it's the human race.
It's the human race.
Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
This is Pamela Anchang on Africa Speaks. Thank you.